What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about a movie called Death of a Unicorn. This movie is written and directed by a guy that I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, Alex Sharfman. I hope, forgive me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. But this movie has a fantastic cast. You're looking at Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, Richard E. Grant, Tia Leone, Will Poulter, and Anthony Carrigan. So this movie follows Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega. They're on their way to a business meeting for Paul Rudd in the middle of nowhere through the wilderness, and along the way they hit a unicorn. Yes, and they obviously can't leave it there, so they take it and load it in the back of their car, and they go to the retreat where the meeting's taking place. And along that way, they figure out that throughout the movie, they figure out that these unicorns have magical powers and stuff like that. Like their blood can heal. Their horn has a significance that I don't want to say anything about. And of course, the pharmaceutical CEOs of this house that where they're the people that they're meeting, which is Richard E. Grant, T. Leone, and all of them. Of course, want to take that and be like, there's money to be made here. So of course that comes with a bunch of consequences. First and foremost, this movie I feel like is so hard to describe because it's everywhere. It's a comedy, but it's this horror movie mixed with this sci-fi fantasy, and it's able to mix them and blend them well enough that you buy into all of it. You're just there for it. You're like, you know what? This is something original. This is something really cool, and I'm fully on board for this, so take me on this ride. I know this movie premiered at South by Southwest just a few weeks ago, and apparently it did fantastic there. People were raving about it. They thought it was hysterical, and a lot of people just really, really seemed to love it. I have to admit, this movie, it worked for me. I found myself having just a really good time with it, mainly because I feel like the story was just so bonkers that you're like, like I said just a second ago, that I was just there. I was fully on board for it. And I was fully prepared for the ride it was going to take me on. But even though I did not know at all where this movie was going to go, but I was locked in. I think everybody does a fantastic job with their performances, especially when it comes to the comedy. Anthony Carrigan is kind of the one of the bigger ones because a lot of his stuff he plays like the servant to these rich people. And so he's always like kind of in the background for something, and he's got some great comic stuff that happens throughout this movie. And Will Poulter, man, he's this dude. I first saw him in comedy, and I've seen him go on to do some dramatic stuff, and he's a fantastic actor. This dude is great. He can do comedy, he can do drama. He's one of those guys I truly believe he can do just about any type of genre, and he's fantastic. He plays like this, the son, and yeah, he's got. I don't want to give anything away, but he's got a great stuff with yeah. I'll just leave it at that. He's fantastic. He's pretty funny. He's got some really funny stuff. I do enjoy the build up that this movie gives to you because, like I said, it just starts out as this normal movie, like a normal everyday movie, and then of course this stuff happens with this unicorn, which then Jenna Ortega starts to really dig into the lore and build these backstories of stuff with these unicorns and stuff that happened in the past, which eventually leads to this dread that you start to have because you're like, okay, clearly everything that she's found throughout this lore, that is going to happen at some point in this movie. You're like, I don't know when, but it does this great job of building stuff and leaving these breadcrumbs throughout that you're just kind of like, at any given time the shoe can drop, and you're like, so while you're entertained and you're laughing, so you're kind of relaxed, you're also kind of like, okay, when is the other shoe gonna drop, and when's shit really gonna hit the fan? Because while it does this great job of being this comedy, like midway through the movie, it takes this shift into like a suspense movie where you're like, suspense thriller movie where you're kind of like, okay. And then by the third act, you're in this like straight up monster horror movie, and you're like, wow. And I think the look of the unicorns are great. Obviously, it's CGI, but I think the CGI is done well enough, again, where it doesn't take you out of the movie. I mean, at this point you're on the ride for this movie about unicorns and stuff like that anyway, so you're kind of already invested. So you're like, can you really be taken out of a movie like this? And when it finally does kick into that horror route near the end, man, there's some brutal deaths in this movie. Wow, like there's some they go for it with a lot of fronts with some stuff where you're like, wow, you're like, so that's a plus. There's a little bit of carnage candy in there for all the horror fans out there. While all that is going on throughout this movie, I also, for me, I picked up, I don't know if anybody else picked up on this, but I also picked up on that this movie was kind of about how certain people can't leave stuff alone. Like it's once they figure something out, they have to have more of it. And what you have is never enough. It's all, you always have to have more. And it's that greed factor, because they realize, oh, I can profit off of this, or I can live more comfortably this way. And it kind of tackles that subject as well as, that the funny thing of in movies to me, where it's like something about people, they love to fuck with shit they don't understand, and that usually tends to lead to get them killed. And for me, I'm the exact opposite of that. I'm like, you know what? Some things in this world we're not meant to understand or mess with, and I'm cool with that. But it's like that movie that came out a few years ago, Life, with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal and all them. When they capture the alien, they're just like, okay, we got to poke and prod at this and figure out what it is, and we can't just leave it alone. We have to, we our curiosity really does get us killed. So it's the same way in this movie with that. And at the same time, I think it's talking really about the rich and the poor, because you have the pharmaceutical, the who Richard E. Grant and his family are a part of, and they want to use this blood as like a healing factor to maybe start to cure cancer. But in the movie, of course, they're like, oh yeah, it's all for the world. It's never for what do you call it, for our financial gain and stuff. And you're like, yeah, bullshit. First of all, bullshit. And there's a line in the movie that Jenna Ortega says that kind of makes you think about that, to where obviously their mom has passed away. Her mom has passed away, and Paul Rudd is trying to tell her. She said, just imagine what if mom had something like that. Your mom had something like this, she would still be here. And she looks at the point, looks at him and says that, yeah, right, like they would let her ever have anything like this. And and it kind of makes you think, where you're kind of like, yeah, that's kind of valid. So it kind of plays with that. I mean, obviously it doesn't lean into that at all. It's just one of those things. It's an undertone of the movie. It's a little seed that's planted there that you kind of get in your brain, that you're like, okay, I know it's there, but that's it. So it just gives you a little nugget to think about while you're watching the movie. And again, it's like I've talked about with these other movies the past year, that's left those little clues for you for certain things like that. It's a movie to where you can watch this movie as that, and you can have just a damn good time with it. Or if you want to a really deep dive and have a conversation about that in particular after the movie, you can. So it's one of those movies that goes either way, and it's one of those movies you can enjoy either way. Is one full package. If you want to look at it as one movie or another movie, you can. But either way, it's one of those movies that pulls everything off very well, and it's able to blend stuff together so well, and it's just a fun, wild, adventurous ride. I just think maybe in certain ways it leaves you with these certain ideas that I just think in in some ways it also might leave certain audiences with something to reflect on. And I love movies that can do all that. Now, it does have some heartwarming moments in it as well, between Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd, because they're kind of course, that estranged father-daughter relationship. And while you do have some heartwarming moments with them, I feel like you don't get enough of their character. Like, there's not enough of an arc for them throughout this movie. Like, there is like little pieces and hints of certain things, and you know for pretty much the most part why they are estranged, and you get from, especially from Paul Rudd's side as well, why they feel the way that they feel. But I think there is just a little bit more they could have done with that, just to give you just a little bit more. I just felt like it was almost there with their character to have full arcs and come a full circle. And you just, for me at least, you didn't quite get there, but you got so close. You were almost there. And but that doesn't take away from what we do get. I do believe that the scenes with them when they're talking back and forth and stuff, I feel like it works. It has a solid foundation to it, and you can really, and you get on board because you do care. You genuinely care about these guys. And through the majority of the movie with that, you're begging for Paul Rudd to make the right choice when it comes to certain things with his daughter. You're like, please, I totally understand why you want to do what you want to do, but for your kid, please make the right choice. For me, I would recommend checking this movie out at the theater. One, because it's an original story, and I really want to push people to see anything original, because I know a lot of people are clamoring for original content, original movies, and this movie is that. It's very original. It's just a fun, like, campy, almost like fairy tale type movie, and it's got that in its DNA, and it's just a lot of fun. It's just something you can go have fun with, turn your brain off, and enjoy yourself. Because I am very curious where people is going to land on this. I feel like this movie could go either way. I feel like there's going to be a big split where it's either everybody loves this movie and has a blast with it, and I feel like there's going to be people that be like, okay, that was just overly stupid. Which I get. I totally understand. It depends on who you are and what your wheelhouse for film is. But I don't know. This movie worked for me. I had fun with it. It's just one of those fun popcorn movies. Go out, support it. Please see it if it interests you. And just the talent involved, I would see it for, just alone. So, but as always, if you guys enjoy this review, please comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know if you've seen The Death of a Unicorn. I'd love to know what your thoughts are down below. Please check out any of my other 2025 reviews. I have maybe 10, 12 at this point. So please check those out. And as always, I will see all of you in the next one. Thank you so much.